The volcanic rock crumbled under Owen Cross's boots as he climbed the ridge. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cooling units in his survey suit. He had been tracking thermal signatures for 3 hours now, cataloging the native wildlife that somehow thrived in these hellish badlands. New Columbia needed complete ecosystem data before expanding settlements further west, and Owen had volunteered for the job. Most colonists preferred the comfortable labs back in town. He preferred the field, where real discoveries happened. His scanner beeped, indicating movement behind a cluster of black stones. Owen moved carefully, expecting another lava salamander or maybe one of those rock-boring worms. What he found instead made him freeze completely. A dragon lay collapsed among the stones. Not one of the massive adults that occasionally flew over the colony, but a baby no bigger than a large dog. Her scales were a deep purple color, scratched and burned in dozens of places. One wing hung at an odd angle. Blood, darker than human blood, pooled beneath her small body. Owen's training screamed at him to back away. Dragons were dangerous. Colonial protocol was clear. Avoid all contact, report sightings immediately, never approach. Adult dragons could destroy starships with their breath weapons. Even babies had razor-sharp claws and teeth, but this baby wasn't attacking. She was dying. The dragon's eye opened, focusing on Owen with surprising clarity. She made a sound, not a roar, but something closer to a whimper. Then she did something that changed everything. She lifted her small head with obvious effort and grabbed Owen's sleeve with her teeth. Not biting, just holding, pulling gently. Owen stared at the creature. She pulled again, more insistently, then released his sleeve and looked back toward the deeper mountains. She chirped a surprisingly bird-like sound and pulled his sleeve once more. Her eyes met his, and Owen saw something he never expected to see in a predator's gaze: desperation, pleading, terror. The baby dragon was begging him to follow her. Owen's mind raced through everything he knew about dragons. Highly intelligent, possibly more than humans. Territorial, but not mindlessly aggressive. They communicated with each other through some method scientists hadn't figured out yet. They protected their young fiercely. This baby had been hurt badly, and she was trying to lead him somewhere. He should call for backup. He should return to the colony. He should follow every safety rule in the book. Instead, Owen knelt down and checked the baby's injuries. She flinched but didn't pull away. The burns looked recent, maybe a few hours old. The wing wasn't broken, just badly bruised. She was exhausted and dehydrated, but not dying. Not yet. Owen pulled out his canteen and poured water into his cupped hand. The baby dragon sniffed it, then lapped it up eagerly. She chirped again, softer this time, and nuzzled his hand with her snout. The gesture was so trusting, so clearly thankful, that Owen felt his heart twist that he made his decision. He would follow her. Owen packed his emergency supplies, took a reading of his position, and activated his suit's tracker beacon. If something went wrong, at least the colony would know where to find his body. The baby dragon, whom Owen started calling Pip because of her chirping sounds, struggled to her feet and began walking toward the mountains. She looked back every few steps to make sure he was following. They traveled for hours. The terrain grew rougher, more dangerous. Pip moved with determination despite her injuries, occasionally stopping to rest, but never giving up. Owen noticed strange things as they went deeper. Scorch marks covered the rocks, far more than natural volcanic activity would cause. The air smelled wrong, like burning metal mixed with something sour. No other animals appeared, not even insects. The usual sounds of the Badlands, the hissing vents and cracking stones, seemed muted and wrong. The silence felt unnatural, oppressive. Pip led him through a narrow canyon where the walls seemed to press in from both sides. Owen's scanner showed massive energy readings ahead, but the patterns made no sense. As they emerged from the canyon, Owen saw their destination. A cave entrance, wide enough to swallow a house, gaped in the mountainside ahead. Darkness filled the opening like a physical thing. Pip chirped urgently and pulled his sleeve again. She was trembling now, clearly afraid of the cave, but equally determined to enter it. Owen activated his suit lights and checked his equipment. His sidearm held 20 shots. His medical kit had basic supplies. His communicator showed weak signal. Not ideal, but he had committed to this path. They approached the cave entrance together. The temperature dropped noticeably. That sour smell grew stronger. Then Owen heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold and his hands shake. From deep within the cave came a low, rumbling wail. Not a roar, something worse. It sounded like dozens of voices crying out in agony, all blending together into one horrible chorus of pain. Pip looked up at Owen with those pleading eyes. She chirped once more, softly, desperately. Whatever was inside that cave was suffering. Whatever was inside needed help. And somehow, this baby dragon believed that Owen, a human, could provide that help. Owen took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness. Pip pressed close to his leg, her small body warm against him. The wailing grew louder with each step. Owen's lights pierced only a few meters into the gloom. The walls were smooth, clearly worked by intelligent hands millions of years ago. Markings covered the stone, symbols he didn't recognize. They descended deeper. The wailing never stopped, and Owen began to understand that he had just made either the bravest or most foolish decision of his life, perhaps both. The tunnel seemed endless. Owen's suit lights reflected off walls that grew smoother as they descended, the ancient carvings becoming more elaborate. Pip stayed close, occasionally making small sounds that Owen was starting to understand. A low chirp meant danger ahead. A higher chirp meant keep going. She was communicating with him, and somehow he was learning her language. After what felt like hours but was probably 30 minutes, the tunnel opened into something impossible. Owen stopped dead, his breath catching in his throat. The chamber before him was enormous, easily 200 meters across. Bioluminescent crystals growing from the ceiling provided a dim blue light that painted everything in ghostly colors. But the light wasn't what made Owen's heart race. Dragons filled the chamber. Dozens of them. They were all young, ranging from Pip's size to juveniles as large as horses. And they were all sick. Their scales, which should have gleamed with health, looked dull and lifeless. Many lay motionless on the ground, their breathing shallow and labored. Some had strange crystalline growths on their bodies, glowing with the same blue light as the ceiling crystals. The wailing Owen had heard came from them, a chorus of pain and fear. Pip ran forward, and Owen followed carefully. In the center of the chamber lay an adult dragon, massive and terrible even in her weakened state. She had to be the mother. Crystalline growths covered much of her body, concentrated around her chest and neck. Her breathing was wet and labored. When she saw Owen, her eyes opened wide. Owen expected attack, expected fire or claws or death. Instead, the mother dragon whimpered. The sound was heartbreaking coming from such a powerful creature. She looked at Pip, then at Owen, then back to Pip. Understanding passed between mother and daughter. Pip chirped frantically, gesturing with her small snout between Owen and the sick dragons around them. The mother dragon's gaze locked onto Owen with desperate intensity. She was asking him something, begging him, but for what? Owen approached slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. His scanner was going crazy, beeping alerts faster than he could read them. He focused on the readings, trying to understand what he was seeing. The dragons were infected with something, but not a normal disease. The crystalline growths weren't minerals. They were alive, parasitic. They were feeding on the dragon's unique biology, draining their life force and spreading through their bodies. The readings showed something else. The infection originated from somewhere deeper in the cave system. It wasn't natural. It was spreading from a central source, and these dragons had somehow contained it until recently. But containing it had cost them everything. Owen moved among the sick younglings, scanning each one. The infection was at different stages. Some had barely any crystal growth and might recover. Others were nearly consumed, the crystals spreading across their scales like some horrible disease. A few of the smallest ones had already stopped breathing. Pip went to each of her siblings, nuzzling them gently and making soft sounds of distress. The mother dragon watched Owen work. He could feel her gaze on him, could sense her intelligence analyzing his every move. When he returned to her side, she did something shocking. She lowered her massive head and gently touched his chest with her snout. The gesture was unmistakable. Trust. Hope. Owen pulled out his medical kit, knowing it was woefully inadequate for this situation. He had basic antibiotics, pain medication, wound dressings. Nothing designed for alien parasites or crystalline infections. But he had to try something. He prepared a sample of the crystal growth from a juvenile who seemed stable enough to handle the procedure. The dragon flinched but allowed it as Owen analyzed the sample. His scanner revealed something incredible. The parasite had a unique energy signature, one that resonated with dragon biology specifically. It was tailored to feed on their life force. But there was a gap in its structure, a weakness. The parasite couldn't adapt to certain metabolic processes that humans shared with dragons, but other species didn't. Owen's hand started shaking as he realized what this meant. Dragons and humans had similar enough biology that human immune responses might work against the infection. The mother dragon had somehow known this. She had sent Pip to find a human specifically because humans were the only species that could potentially save her children. But how had she known? How could she know about human biology? Owen looked at the mother dragon and saw something in her eyes. Ancient knowledge. Genetic memory passed down through generations. Whatever dragons were, they were far older and wiser than humans had guessed. They knew things that science hadn't discovered yet. The mother dragon made a weak sound and used her tail to gesture toward another tunnel, one Owen hadn't noticed before. This tunnel glowed with a brighter blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The gesture was clear. Go there. See the source. Owen wanted to start treating the sick dragons immediately, but he knew he needed to understand the full situation first. He looked at Pip, who had returned to his side. She chirped nervously, clearly afraid of that tunnel, but trusting him to investigate. Owen checked his communicator. Still no signal. The cave was blocking transmissions. He was completely on his own. He moved toward the blue tunnel, and the temperature dropped noticeably. The air felt wrong here, heavy and oppressive. The walls were covered in the crystalline growth, pulsing with unnatural rhythm. His scanner's alerts became a continuous whine. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Radiation that didn't match any known source. And something else. Something that made his primitive hindbrain scream warnings. Owen entered the tunnel, and with each step, the truth began to reveal itself. The sick dragons weren't the real problem. They were symptoms. Something far worse waited ahead. Something that made the hair on his neck stand up and his mouth go dry. Something that had been waiting in the darkness for a very long time. The blue light grew brighter as Owen moved deeper. His suit's radiation sensors screamed warnings that he was walking into dangerous territory. But he couldn't turn back now. Not when the answer to everything waited ahead. The tunnel walls pulsed with that same unnatural heartbeat rhythm, and Owen realized the crystalline growth wasn't just covering the walls. It was part of them, woven into the ancient stone like veins and flesh. The tunnel opened into a chamber that stole Owen's breath and replaced it with ice-cold fear. Before him stood a structure that couldn't exist, shouldn't exist, a massive crystalline prison, at least 50 meters tall, built with technology that made human engineering look like children's toys. The structure was translucent, glowing from within with that pulsing blue light. And inside it, something moved. Owen forced himself to step closer, even though every instinct told him to run. Through the crystal walls, he saw a shape. Not solid, not quite liquid. Something that existed between states, vast and incomprehensible. It had no real form, constantly shifting and changing, but Owen's mind kept trying to make sense of it. For a moment, it looked like a spider made of shadow, then like a flower with too many petals, then like nothing he had words for. The thing was alive, dormant but aware. And when Owen looked at it, he felt it look back. The sensation made him stumble backward, his heart hammering against his ribs. The entity's presence pressed against his mind like cold fingers probing for weakness. Then it withdrew, perhaps recognizing that Owen was protected by the prison's walls, for now. Owen tore his gaze away and looked at the walls surrounding the prison. Carvings covered every surface, telling a story in images his translator slowly began processing. The story they told made Owen's blood run cold. Millions of years ago, something came from beyond the galaxy, an entity that fed on life itself, consuming everything in its path. It spread through crystalline seeds, infecting world after world. Whole civilizations fell to it. Their populations turned into mindless extensions of its will. An alliance of ancient species rose to fight it. They couldn't destroy it, so they imprisoned it here, deep underground on a young planet far from civilized space. Dragons were chosen as guardians. Their unique biology allowed them to channel life force into the prison, maintaining its seals. For millions of years, adult dragons took turns powering the prison, passing the duty from generation to generation. They built their nests near it, raised their young with knowledge of their sacred purpose. They were protectors, not predators, shields against the darkness. But something had changed recently. The carvings showed it clearly. Seismic activity, mining operations, energy signatures from above. Human colonization. Humans hadn't known what they were disturbing with their surveys and settlements. The vibrations had weakened the prison. The seals were cracking, and the entity was waking up. Owen looked at the prison again and saw what he had missed before. Cracks. Hundreds of tiny fractures spreading across the crystal surface like a spider web. Blue light leaked from them, and where it touched the stone, new crystalline growths appeared. The infection killing the dragons wasn't random. The entity was targeting its jailers first. Knowing they were the key to its freedom, Owen's scanner showed more horrifying details. The infection was accelerating. In the 3 hours since he entered the cave, the crystal growth had spread by 2%. At that rate, the prison would fail completely in a matter of weeks. When it failed, the entity would break free. It would spread across New Columbia first, turning the colonists into infected puppets. Then it would spread to other settlements, other planets, other systems. The whole galaxy would fall just like it had millions of years ago. Owen staggered back toward the main chamber, his mind racing. He understood now why the mother dragon was desperate enough to trust a human. The dragons couldn't fight this alone. They were dying. The next generation was infected before they could learn their purpose. The prison was failing. Without help, everything would end. But what help could humans provide? They barely understood the technology involved. They didn't have the biological ability to channel life force like dragons. They were just colonists trying to survive on a frontier world. Owen burst back into the main chamber, breathing hard. The mother dragon lifted her head weakly, her eyes asking the question, "Did you understand? Do you see what we face?" Owen nodded, knowing she would understand the gesture. He did see. He saw a nightmare beyond anything humans had prepared for. But he also saw something else. The infection had a weakness. It couldn't adapt to certain biological processes, human processes, that had to mean something, that had to be a key to fighting it. Before Owen could formulate a plan, he heard sounds from the main tunnel. Heavy footsteps, multiple people, voices calling his name. The emergency beacon he had activated must have finally gotten through. A rescue team had come looking for him. 3 adult dragons suddenly appeared at the far entrance of the chamber, drawn by the approaching humans. They saw Owen standing among the sick younglings and the dying mother. Their eyes blazed with fury. Smoke curled from their nostrils. They roared, and the sound shook dust from the ceiling. They thought Owen had done this, thought the human had infected their young. The dragons advanced, ready to kill. Pip threw herself between Owen and the adults, chirping frantically. The mother dragon tried to roar in Owen's defense, but only managed a weak croak. Owen stood his ground, unarmed and terribly fragile compared to the creatures before him. He had seconds before they struck. Seconds to somehow communicate the truth. Seconds to prevent the one alliance that might save everyone from being destroyed before it could begin. Owen raised his empty hands and did the only thing he could think of. He projected his scanner's images into the air, showing the prison, the entity, the spreading infection. And he prayed that these ancient, Intelligent creatures would understand before their claws found his throat. The three adult dragons froze, their eyes locked on the projected images floating in the air. Owen's hands trembled as he held the scanner steady, showing them everything he had discovered. The prison, the entity, the infection spreading from the cracks. One of the adults, a massive male with copper-colored scales and old battle scars, stepped forward carefully. His eyes widened with recognition that he knew. This dragon was old enough to remember the truth, old enough to have served as a guardian. The copper dragon made a deep rumbling sound, and the other two adults backed down immediately. He approached Owen slowly, each step measured and careful. When he was close enough that Owen could feel the heat radiating from his scales, the dragon stopped. They stared at each other, predator and prey, alien and human, guardian and newcomer. Then the copper dragon did something that made Owen's heart nearly stop. He used one claw to make a small cut on his own chest, right above his heart. Dark blood welled up. The dragon gestured with his head, first to the wound, then to Owen's hand. The meaning was clear, a blood bond. The highest form of trust among dragons. Pip chirped encouragement. The mother dragon made a sound of approval. Owen understood what this meant. If he did this, he would be bound to these creatures in ways he couldn't fully understand. There would be no going back. But without this bond, without this trust, the alliance would fail before it started. Owen pulled out his knife and cut his palm. The pain was sharp and immediate. He pressed his bleeding hand to the dragon's wound. The moment their blood touched, the world exploded into light and sensation. Owen fell into the dragon's mind, or the dragon fell into his. Suddenly, he was experiencing millions of years of genetic memory. He saw the ancient war against the entity, watched worlds burn and species fall. He felt the desperation of the alliance as they built the prison. He experienced the first guardian's choice to bind themselves to this duty. Generation after generation, dragons had kept watch, kept the galaxy safe, sacrificed their freedom to hold back the darkness. And he saw something else, a memory buried deep in dragon consciousness, a prophecy or prediction from the eldest dragons before they died, that one day, creatures would come to this world, creatures with clever hands and stubborn hearts, beings who could build and adapt and refuse to give up. The dragons had been waiting for humans, even if they didn't fully know why. They had known that when the prison began to fail, they would need help from the newcomers. The connection broke, and Owen collapsed to his knees, gasping. The copper dragon stepped back, looking equally shaken. But in that moment of shared consciousness, understanding had passed between them. Owen knew the dragon's name, or at least the concept that served as his name. Old Smoke, for the color of his scales and the countless battles he had survived. Old Smoke turned to the other dragons and made a series of sounds. They bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Then he looked at Owen and made a gesture with his tail toward the sick younglings. The meaning was clear. Now we work together. The human rescue team burst into the chamber at that moment, weapons raised and ready. They froze when they saw the scene before them. Owen standing among adult dragons. The sick younglings. The dying mother. Their team leader, Commander Patricia Hall, was the first to find her voice. Owen, step away from them slowly. We got you covered. No. Owen said, his voice stronger than he expected. Lower your weapons. These dragons aren't the enemy. They're the solution. Have you lost your mind? Those things are dangerous. They're guardians, Owen replied. And if we don't help them, everyone on this planet dies. Everyone in this system. Maybe everyone in the galaxy. The adult dragons remained still, clearly understanding that sudden movement would trigger the nervous humans. Old Smoke made a low sound, almost like a sigh. Pip ran to Owen and pressed against his leg, making worried chirps. Commander Hall's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. Explain. Fast. Owen told them everything. The prison, the entity, the infection, the dragon's ancient duty, the cracks spreading, the weeks they had before complete failure. He showed them the scanner data, the images, the proof. As he talked, he saw the color drain from Hall's face. She was a veteran, had seen combat in 3 different systems, and fear wasn't something that touched her easily. But it touched her now. How do we stop it? She asked. We work with them, Owen said, gesturing to the dragons. Human biology has the key to fighting the infection. Dragon power can reinforce the prison. Together, we might have a chance. The colony will never agree to this. People are terrified of dragons. Then people need to get over their fear, because the alternative is extinction. Old Smoke approached Commander Hall slowly. She tensed but held her ground. The dragon examined her carefully, then made a sound of approval. He could sense her strength, her courage. He turned and gestured to the sick younglings, then to Owen's medical kit. The message was clear. Start now. Prove the alliance can work. Hall looked at Owen, then at the dragons, then at her team. She made the command decision that would change everything. Lower weapons. Get the medical supplies from the transport. We're helping them. One of her soldiers objected. Commander, this violates every protocol. Then I'll face court-martial later. Right now, we have a job to do. The team moved quickly, bringing in equipment and supplies. Human medics began working alongside Owen to stabilize the younglings. The adult dragons watched carefully, but allowed it. Old Smoke positioned himself near the mother dragon, and through their bond, Owen felt the ancient creature sharing his life force to keep her alive a little longer. Pip stayed with Owen, helping him identify which younglings were worst off. As humans and dragons worked together for the first time, something remarkable happened. The fear began to fade, replaced by purpose. News of the Dragon Alliance reached New Columbia within hours, and the reaction nearly tore the colony apart. Governor Richards demanded Owen's immediate arrest for violating contact protocols. Half the council wanted to evacuate the planet. The other half wanted to send military forces to eliminate the dragon threat permanently. Scientists begged for access to study the situation. Religious groups called it everything from divine intervention to demonic conspiracy. Commander Hall ignored all of it and focused on keeping her team working. More supplies arrived. More personnel volunteered, despite the danger. Owen had created a treatment using his own blood as a base, combined with compounds from the crystalline infection. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Slowly, the younglings began to respond. Their scales regained color. The crystal growths receded. Pip was among the first to fully recover, and she refused to leave Owen's side. The mother dragon's condition stabilized enough for her to communicate more clearly. Through a combination of gestures and the mental connection Owen now shared with Old Smoke, she told them her name. Skykeeper, for her role watching the heavens above the prison. She had been one of the last guardians who knew the complete truth. When the infection struck her clutch, she used every bit of her remaining strength to shield them, knowing that if they all died, no one would remain to warn the next generation. Sending Pip to find a human had been her last desperate gamble. It had worked. 3 weeks into the alliance, Owen took Commander Hall to see the prison. She needed to understand the full scope of what they faced. They stood in the blue-lit chamber, and Hall's veteran composure finally cracked completely. She stared at the entity pressing against the weakening crystal, and for the first time since Owen had known her, she looked truly afraid. How long? She asked quietly. 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. And if it breaks free? Owen didn't need to answer. They both knew. Hall turned away from the prison and straightened her shoulders, pushing the fear down through sheer force of will. Then we don't let it break free. What do we need? Owen explained the theory he and Old Smoke had developed through their bond. The prison required 2 things to maintain its seal: power, which the dragons provided through their life force, and will, the conscious choice to hold back the darkness. The ancient builders had both. The Dragon Guardians had maintained it for millions of years. But the current generation was dying off, and the young ones weren't ready. The solution required volunteers. Humans who would bond with young dragons, combining their life forces and their will. The bond would change them, extend their lifespans, tie them to this world as permanent guardians. They would give up normal lives to become protectors. It was asking for everything. Hall listened to all of this, then nodded once. I volunteer. Commander, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I've spent 30 years in service protecting people. This is just a bigger scale. She looked at the sick younglings recovering in the main chamber. Besides, Someone needs to show the others it can be done. Word spread that Commander Hall was volunteering for the bonding ritual. Other humans stepped forward. Ruby, the young medic who had formed a connection with several of the baby dragons. Scientists fascinated by the opportunity. Soldiers who understood duty. Colonists who had made this world their home and refused to abandon it. 30 humans volunteered. Combined with the 30 young dragons of Pip's generation who were now healthy enough, they had 60 potential guardian pairs. It might be enough. Old Smoke and the other elder dragons taught them the ritual. It was complex, requiring preparation and precision. Each human would bond with a specific dragon, their life forces intertwining permanently. The ceremony would be painful and irreversible. Some candidates backed out when they fully understood what they were committing to, but most stayed. The day before the ritual, Skykeeper called Owen to her side. She had improved dramatically, though the extensive crystal scarring meant she would never fully recover. Through her connection with Old Smoke, she sent Owen images, memories of her daughter's hatching. Pip exploring the cave for the first time. The moment Skykeeper realized her clutch was infected and she made the choice to shield them, even knowing it would likely kill her. Then Skykeeper touched Owen's mind directly, and he understood. She was giving him permission, blessing the bond between him and Pip, acknowledging him as her daughter's chosen partner. The honor of it made Owen's eyes sting with tears. The ceremony took place in the main chamber, with both human witnesses and dragon elders present. 60 pairs stood together, human and dragon side by side. Old Smoke led the ritual, his deep voice echoing off the ancient walls. The elder dragons channeled power, and the humans opened themselves to the connection. Pain hit like lightning. Owen felt his life force reaching out and intertwining with Pip's. Their hearts synchronized, beating as one. His consciousness expanded, and suddenly he could feel everything she felt. Her fear of the pain, her love for him, her determination to protect him just as fiercely as he wanted to protect her. Their minds touched, merged, became something new while remaining distinct. When the ceremony ended, 60 pairs stood changed forever. Owen looked down at his hands and saw faint scale patterns beneath his skin, glowing softly with dragon fire. He could feel Pip's presence in his mind, not as a separate voice, but as part of himself. When she moved, he felt the ghost sensation of wings on his back. When he thought about the prison, she understood completely without words. Commander Hall emerged from her bonding with a young male dragon named Stormchaser. Her eyes held an otherworldly quality now, reflecting dragon vision. She grinned at Owen, looking more alive than he had ever seen her. "Ready to save the galaxy?" she asked. "Ready to try," Owen replied. The bonded pairs descended to the prison chamber together, 60 minds united in purpose. The prison chamber felt different with 60 bonded pairs surrounding it. The blue light pulsed faster, as if the entity sensed what was coming. Through his connection with Pip, Owen could feel the ancient creature's hunger, its rage at being imprisoned for so long. It pressed against the crystal walls with increasing desperation, knowing this might be its last chance to break free before the new guardians sealed it away forever. Old Smoke and the elder dragons positioned the bonded pairs around the prison in a specific pattern, one developed over millions of years of guardian duty. They taught the new protectors how to channel their combined life force, how to weave their will into the prison structure. Human technology had been integrated into the process, amplifiers and stabilizers that enhanced what the dragons could do naturally. It was a fusion of ancient knowledge and new innovation. Together, Old Smoke's voice resonated in every bonded mind. Not human, not dragon. Together, the 60 pairs reached out with their combined power. Owen felt Pip's strength flowing through him, felt his own determination channeling through her. All around the chamber, the same thing was happening. Human cleverness guided dragon instinct. Dragon power amplified human will. They began weaving their life force into the prison, reinforcing the cracks, strengthening the seal. The entity screamed. The sound was felt rather than heard, a psychic wave of fury and desperation. It threw itself against the crystal walls with everything it had. For a terrible moment, Owen thought the prison would shatter. The blue light blazed so bright it hurt to look at. The ground shook. Dust and stones fell from the ceiling, but the bonded pairs held firm. Owen realized something crucial in that moment. The entity was ancient and powerful, but it was alone. It had always been alone, unable to comprehend cooperation or unity. The 60 pairs weren't just using power. They were using connection. Every bond between human and dragon, every friendship forming in the colony above, every moment of trust overcoming fear. All of it wove together into something the entity couldn't understand or break. The prison's blue light began to change. Gold started mixing with the blue, warm instead of cold. The cracks sealed one by one, reinforced by the combined will of creatures who chose to stand together. The entity pressed harder, fighting with everything it had, but it was fighting against something it had never encountered before. Not a single species defending itself, but multiple species choosing to protect each other. The gold light grew brighter, pushing back the blue. The entity's presence weakened, forced back into dormancy. Its consciousness fractured and scattered, unable to maintain coherence against the unified front. One final pulse of fury rippled through the chamber, and then it was done. The entity slept once more, bound by chains stronger than the original prison. The 60 pairs collapsed, exhausted but alive. Owen lay on the stone floor with Pip curled against him, both of them breathing hard. Through their bond, he felt her joy, her pride, her relief. They had done it. All of them together. Recovery took days. The bonded pairs discovered their new abilities gradually. They aged slower now, would live for centuries instead of decades. They could feel each other across vast distances. Human partners gained enhanced strength and senses. Dragon partners gained human creativity and adaptability. They were something new, a bridge between species. The colony's reaction shifted dramatically once people saw the results. Fear couldn't survive in the face of proof. Humans and dragons working side by side. Children playing near dragon younglings without danger. The bonded pairs demonstrating their partnership. Governor Richards had no choice but to accept the new reality and began establishing official protocols for human-dragon cooperation. Skykeeper lived long enough to see her clutch fully recovered and bonded with their human partners. On her final day, she called Owen and Pip to her side. Through old smoke, she sent them her last message. Gratitude for saving her children. Pride in her daughter's choice of partner. Hope for the future that humans and dragons would build together. When Skykeeper died, the entire colony mourned. Humans and dragons stood together at her memorial, honoring the guardian who had sacrificed everything to protect them all. Her body was cremated in dragon fire, and her ashes were scattered over the mountain she had protected for so long. Word of the alliance spread to other colonies, then to Earth, then throughout human space. The existence of the entity and the dragon guardians became public knowledge. Other species in the galaxy reacted with shock and respect. Some offered aid. Others isolated themselves in fear. But the truth couldn't be ignored. There were horrors in the darkness between stars, and the defense against them required cooperation, not isolation. New Columbia became something unique, a shared world where two species lived and worked as equals. More humans volunteered for bonding as new dragon clutches hatched. The Guardian rotation was established, pairs serving shifts to maintain the prison while others lived normal lives. It wasn't a burden anymore, but a shared responsibility, distributed among many instead of falling on a few. 6 months after the crisis, Owen stood at the cave entrance with Pip at his side. She had grown larger, her wings now strong enough to carry them both. The purple scales that had been dull and lifeless when they first met now gleamed with health. Through their bond, he felt her contentment, her happiness. Other bonded pairs flew in the distance, patrolling the mountains together. Below, the colony thrived, new buildings rising where humans and dragons worked side by side. Children, both human and dragon, played together without fear or prejudice. A new generation growing up knowing cooperation instead of conflict. Pip nudged Owen gently and crouched, inviting him onto her back. He climbed up carefully, still getting used to the sensation of flight. She launched into the air with powerful wing beats, and Owen's stomach dropped as they soared over the volcanic Badlands. Through their bond, he felt her joy at flying, felt her love for him, felt her certainty that they had done the right thing. Owen looked down at the world they had saved together. The baby dragon who had begged him to follow her had given him more than he ever imagined. Purpose, partnership, family. The terrifying truth waiting in the darkness had been real, but beyond that terror was something the entity could never understand. The power of different beings choosing to stand together, not despite their differences, but because of them.